Thủy Vân xin thân mến gửi lời chào đến quý khán thính giả của Đài Sài Gòn TV đang theo dõi chương trình talk show ngày hôm nay. Và kính thưa quý vị, một tuần nữa thôi thì VIFF hay còn gọi là Vietnamese International Film Fest sẽ được bắt đầu. Và ngày hôm nay thì Thủy Vân rất là được hân hạnh được ngồi nói chuyện thân mật với một anh chàng người Mỹ trắng. Nhưng mà anh có một cái bộ phim ngắn sẽ được trình chiếu vào cái tuần lễ chiếu phim, những cái tuần lễ chiếu phim của VIFF tuần sau. Bộ phim của anh tên là Mother's Milk hay là Sữa Mẹ. Và ngày hôm nay Thủy Vân xin trân trọng giới thiệu đến quý khán thính giả Andy De Jong.
Xin chào các bạn.
Impressive.
I try.
Kính thưa quý vị, một trong những lý do mà Thủy Vân muốn có một cái cuộc nói chuyện thân mật ngày hôm nay với Andrew, hay còn gọi thân mật là Andy, là vì bộ phim của anh rất là đặc biệt. Thủy Vân đã được coi cái bộ phim này rất là nhiều lần, nhưng lần nào mỗi lần mà xem đi xem lại thì Thủy Vân đều tìm thấy được những cái ý nghĩa, những cái chiều sâu ý nghĩa đặc biệt hơn. Và sau đây thì Thủy Vân xin được mạn phép quý vị hỏi phỏng vấn anh Andy một vài câu, và sau đó thì Thủy Vân sẽ subtitle hay là dịch lại sau cùng quý vị. Okay, let's start. The first thing is when I read the title, I look at your movies and I look at the title. It's intrigued me because I don't know, how do you come up with the title? Was that the first one that you came up with, or is after a long period of time after changing multiple titles? And how do you translate Mother's Milk to, Sữa Mẹ?
Yeah, originally the title started out as just something very simple, like the main character's name is An.
Oh, okay.
So it was called An's Story, but that's kind of boring. So I came upon this fruit, the vusua, and it ended up being a big part of the film, kind of the central object and a metaphor in the film. And so it made sense to name it after something like that. But the English translation of vusua doesn't really make for a good...
Exactly, because you guys don't have the equivalent name for that fruit right
here.
Yeah,
it's a little awkward in English. So we changed it to something else that has a similar meaning to the theme of the movie. So it's still like milk, but instead of vu, it's mother, Sữa Mẹ.
Very nice. Yeah, well, but for you, what puzzled me the most is for you as a Caucasian American guy to make a short movie about something very unique in a rural part of Vietnam like that. So how did the story come about?
Yeah, no, I get that question a lot.
Yeah, I figure.
I used to teach in Chicago at basically a high school, and one of my students there was a Vietnamese orphan. She was adopted to the United States by a woman in Chicago when she was 9 years old, and she was born in Vietnam.
Was she on?
Yeah, she's who the older sister is based on.
Okay.
And she had a younger sister, and her parents both died. They lived in the Dak Lak area in the Highlands, and it's a very sad story of her parents both dying from malaria.
Oh.
And then she was left to kind of take care of her little sister, and she was my friend. She's my friend now, and she was even younger than she was in the film. And I had read when she was a student there, she had written it down, her biography.
Oh, okay.
And so I read it, and I always thought, wow, that would make such a good, kind of compelling movie. And then a few years later, it kind of came true.
So I'm going to go back to, because you mentioned, and I know that the whole movie was shot at Dak Lak also. And I bet that there's a lot of memories, a lot of stories you want to share about that. But let's talk about the script first, because you obviously an American guy. So when I watched the movie a couple of times, the Vietnamese seemed to be seamlessly authentic. And I know that's a lot of work because you have to rewrite the story in English and then script it. And so, do you have a lot of help? How long does it take? Do you have like a lot of time bang your head against the wall to really, how do you equivalentize the language?
Yeah, well, anyone that's made a film knows that writing the script is often the hardest part, and then it's even harder working in a language that you don't really know. So the film really wasn't possible, it wouldn't have been possible at all without my friends who I met at film school at USC, Fanzine Lin and Vu Quin Ha.
That's right.
Quin Ha and Win Tai Ha, who Lin, he was my best friend in film school, and we met the first semester, and he didn't have a car because he was Vietnamese, and so I drove him everywhere. I drove him down here, and so I kind of started making a lot of Vietnamese friends, and they were my best friends. I worked with filmmakers that came over for summer programs at USC, and so when it came time to do the movie, they're the people that made it possible, and they convinced me to go to Vietnam to shoot it, and they also are the ones who kind of helped me with the script. So I would write it in English,
right?
And then,
of course,
and they translated to submit to get approved over there. So we could get permits, and then when we started working with the actors, I was flexible enough that the actors would say, "Oh, this doesn't make sense. This isn't what we say in Vietnam
at that time." Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
we say something more like this. So they put in all these expressions that I never would. I wouldn't really know.
So it's like a huge collaboration of everyone, right?
yeah, and that's the way you get the most kind of authentic, most kind of truthful.
Right. So how long does it take for the script? Just a little side question. How long does it take for your original script to be fully, usable in the final product?
It all depends on the writer. For me, I spent a semester kind of writing the idea. I had written it very early in film school, like my second semester there, and it was a very, very different script. Very different. It had machine guns and fences, and then when it came time to do my final film at school, that's when I got back in touch with my friend, and the girl who the film is based on.
Right.
And I said I want to do this film, and I didn't need her kind of blessing to do it, but I wanted it, and I wanted her to be involved. Yeah. And so we talked, and she gave me a lot of bits of information about the story that I didn't have before, and kind of these images and memories that she has. And so I spent pretty much a whole semester talking to her and taking her memories, 6 months, and
it's like a memoir kind of thing.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and it's based on her. It's very different, from in a lot of ways from how things actually happen, but there are certain key moments. The images of the corn. She remembers cornfields, and so it was important to me to have corn in it. And yeah, so it took maybe 6 months, and then we started doing pre-production for a few more months before we went to Vietnam. But
about that, it's for me when I watch the movies, I still amazed because it's beautiful, but it's very authentic. You look at that and you know that it's Vietnam. It's not China. It's not Thailand. It's not Malibu, of course.
Malibu, yeah.
So how? I bet that there's a lot of difficulty for you when you go back and you scout for locations. And can you share some, memories or stories behind that?
Yeah. Well, and as anyone that's made a film knows, it's very exhausting and very, very long hours. And then to do so in a country that is very foreign to you, and there wasn't only the language barrier, but just the travel and getting around.
Right. And what do you call it? The atmosphere, right?
Yeah,
It's humid.
the humidity. Yeah,
Right.
I used air conditioning, and they said no, you have to stop using the air. Get used to it, and everything's also much smaller. I'm a pretty big guy, so all the really small chairs, you know, and that was kind of hard to adapt to. And the motorbike also, like the first time I rode a motorbike on the back, I held on to my friend the whole time. And then I learned, and I got used to it, so I could ride, you know, carrying equipment and stuff, and so I adapted, but it was difficult. For location scouting, we actually ended up shooting not in actual dock lock, but in Pleiku.
Oh, okay.
And Yailai, I think is the
Yailai,
Yailai,
Right.
which had a similar dock lock. Ended up being too far away, but just for Yailai, we took a 10-hour bus ride from Saigon to Yailai overnight. Walked around the location for a couple hours. It was very rural in the middle of nowhere, and then took another 10-hour bus ride back. And the bus was so small, like the seats for me, I
remember those kind of buses back then.
Yeah, I got 2 hours of sleep.
I
and so
admire you.
just to scout the location, it was very tough. And thankfully, we ended up using that one. But part of the challenge was finding the right. We wanted a cornfield, and then
then there's a vusua.
the vusua tree, yeah,
trees, right.
which we needed to find a vusua tree that was big enough to climb on and
Right.
somewhat close to.
I saw one of the
cornfields.
photo. You actually climb on that tree, right?
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
But so how long does it take for the whole process of location scouting?
Well, we went there in June of a couple of years ago, and at the beginning of June, and then we had about a month and a half to really cast and look at the locations. Before we went, we had some friends back in Vietnam
Okay, so
kind of
they-
start to look for places,
Right,
but
right.
really we
You
couldn't.
have to have a lot of help.
Yeah, we couldn't do
Right.
too much until we got there and
Right.
actually go and see the places and drove around. And
Okay, very nice. Oh, when I watched the movie, I love the little girl, the sister, the little sister.
Queen
So,
Jean.
and I know that, like you said, a lot of things has to be done before you're actually there to actually shoot the film. So how does the casting, so, you know, what happened if, so the casting actually starts when you're there, right? Because you are, as a director, you have to, like, obviously, the actresses. So how, is it hard, difficult, or it's just like chemistry right there, you pick the first one?
Yeah, no, the casting was one of the more challenging parts, but also one of the more enjoyable parts. So
You had to talk to people?
Yeah, well, we used HK Film, which is a production company there, and
Right.
a casting director through them, and so they brought us, you know, a lot of girls to audition, and we saw probably 35 girls. And most of them didn't know English very well, you know.
Right.
So Lynn or Quinha would introduce and say things, and then I would say things, and they'd translate, and we'd act out, you know, little scenes. But a lot of it was just chemistry and how they listened and interact with you.
Taking directions, you meant, right?
What's that?
Like taking direction, how they take the direction, how.
Yeah, if they can follow, if they listen,
Right.
if they, you know, if they can change, or if do they act one way all the time, or do they have some range?
I see.
And especially for Kim, the young girl, we needed someone who was a little kind of feisty and mischievous.
And she was.
We interviewed some kids, auditioned some younger girls who were just like no personality. Very nice, but no personality. And when I would play a game with them, like a 3-card monte game with koala bears, and to see if they could follow direction, and then they would play the game for me. And she started she started making fun of me and drawing pictures of me and like making jokes about me.
So she's very comfortable with you.
Right. So she felt comfortable, and she also had a sense of humor, and she was also very smart emotionally. Right. You know, she looks young, but she is very much more mature, and so yeah, that kind of won us over.
Yeah, I still always remember the scene that she was looking for her teddy bear on the cornfield. This is adorable. So now, you once mentioned that Ang, which is the older girl, writing down. Well, actually, you're French, right? She's actually writing down her memoir, kind of like the story of her life. So, Sữa Mẹ or Mother's Milk is just a prelude, I believe, because it is where the mother would just passed away, and the older sister have to take care of the younger one. So I really hope that there is some plan in the future for the shorts. Is there any?
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple films actually I want to make. Kind of
a couple?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. Trilogy. You know, Star Wars. And
oh yay.
I have a feature film version, so you know, like a 2-hour movie version of the film, but it follows the girls when they're older, and my friend's story in real life, like this aspect of her life was interesting and compelling enough, but then as I was writing the feature version, she contacted me, and I found out that she moved to Las Vegas and became a professional poker player.
Interesting.
And she's won over $1 million, traveled around the world, and she's this tall, and sits at the poker tables with these like big fat guys. And I said, oh, that's got to go into the script. That's so interesting.
Right, it's a nice twist.
Yeah, and so the feature length version of the film kind of follows her as an adult. And then she actually goes back to Vietnam to to find her sister, her lost sister. So it's a little different than, it departs a little bit from the life story, but it's kind of true to the
accents.
Yeah, the theme of it.
Right.
And it also, you know, something I've become aware of as kind of an outsider, as kind of an American, learning about Vietnam, and something I've learned that is important to a lot of Vietnamese filmmakers is the image of Vietnam see in America and around the world, which is oftentimes just only the war, only you know, only people in the countryside, like my film, but there's so much more to Vietnam than that. And so part of the feature film would show, you know, is an outsider kind of experiencing Vietnam, you know, as it is kind of today. And then the second, the other film is that my friend, she hasn't been back to Vietnam in almost 20 years. So she wants to return to try to find, try to look for some of her, she had a couple other siblings also that she got separated from. So I would follow her back and make a documentary about that.
And hearing what you want to share to the whole world about what other things that Vietnam can offer, I, being a Vietnamese, like to thank you for being, I think, I'd like to say generous and very open-minded about that. And I really can't wait. I really hope that probably in the next 2 years, less than that, I know it's like a lot to make a feature, but I really looking forward to see the trilogy, as you said, of Mother's Milk.
Yeah, no, me too, and Komachi, and thanks for the opportunity to share.
Okay. Và kính thưa quý vị, bộ phim ngắn của Annie de John sẽ được trình chiếu trong một collection, một loạt những bộ phim ngắn tại VIP vào ngày thứ Sáu vào ngày 5 tháng 4 vào lúc 11 giờ trong một chuỗi series gọi là Life Goes On, cuộc sống vẫn tiếp diễn. Và Thủy Vân và Annie de John xin thân mến gửi lời chào đến quý khán giả và xin hẹn gặp lại quý vị trong chương trình talk show lần sau. you.